YouTube family, what's good with you? It's your boy 2A in LA, and as always, fam, anything I say in this episode, prior episodes, and future episodes is just my personal opinion. Don't take it as fact. Don't take it as law. Always do your own homework and come up with your own conclusions. Right about now, fam, ask you, go ahead. Tap that like button for your boy. If you're new to the channel, I want to say welcome. Come on in. You can join the congregation by smashing that subscribe button and requesting all post notifications. And if you are an existing supporter of this channel, fam, I appreciate you more than you can possibly imagine. You are the reason this channel is anything. All right, fam, let's get this episode rolling. So look, I've done a series of videos now on my Fowler Vanta 9, and I'm doing it because I love this gun. I really, really love this gun. I'm also doing it because I feel like this gun creates a quandary for me. A lot of times, fam, I can look at a gun and I can just tell. Like, when I got my Venom Customs, I was like, oh. When I got my Haze, I was like, oh, there is no doubt that these guns are different. They're just different. Just incredible. Same thing when I got my Rafferty Lucky Devil, right? And my Infinity, I just felt like they were different. They were different. Same way when I got my Erebus, I was like, there's something special. When I got this gun, I was like, this gun is special, but how special? If you looked at the last video I did, I compared the Fowler to a lot of the other mid-tier staples. I compared it to the Legion Precision Chirac. I compared it to the Staccato XE, my upgraded Staccato XE. I compared it to my Race City 9 Defense. I compared it to my Combat Precision GT Dark Horse. And I told you that I thought it was as good, if not better, than all of those guns, except for maybe probably the GT Dark Horse, which is, to be fair, more money. I said that if it was just the GT, which is comparably priced to the Fowler, that I would probably opt for the Fowler. But once Chris James goes back and he does the Dark Horse package and it's comped and it's ported and all this additional work is done to it, then it elevates that gun, in my opinion, over the Fowler. But I said, look, a lot of people will argue that Fowler is just as good as, say, the Haze, right? And you know, my Hayes Cobra has that island barrel and is ported in rose gold. I call this the Rolls Royce of 2011s. A lot of people will say it's just as good as Venom. And you're looking at my Venom's Customs Triport. And you guys know what I feel about Venom and Venom guns and how they're made. A lot of people will say it is just as good as Atlas. So I said, hey, let's run it. Let's run it up against a comparable Atlas gun like the Atlas Apollo. And it wouldn't be me if I didn't throw a wild card in here and pull out the Terran Tactical Sandviper with the upgraded metal grips, right? Look, here's the thing about the Sandviper. People, and I'm kind of sick of it, to be honest. There's so much Terran hate out there, and a lot of people, a lot of purists, I'm going to just call them FUDs. A lot of FUDs don't like Terran guns. Oh, because he's not a machinist. He's not a gunsmith. He doesn't manufacture them. So what? So what? We found out that a lot of guns are wholly or in part manufactured elsewhere. Most gunsmiths are using most gun manufacturers are using other people's parts, including Venom and Haze and certainly Fowler. So I don't care. If you look at a recent video by Honest Outlaw and PewView talking about the Sandviper they call this gun maybe the fastest and one of the most accurate guns that they've ever shot. I haven't seen a bad video on the TTI Tactical Sandviper. People will admit that it's an excellent shooting gun. They'll admit that it's a great trigger, that it's fast, that it is compensated really, really well, and all of that. What they criticize about is the manufacturing quality for the price. Okay, well, I addressed part of it by upgrading to those Icarus Precision grips. And look, let's see. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about kind of the prices of these guns as well as which guns are better. All right, so look, fam. When I did the Fowler kind of versus the mid-tier, the Fowler was, like I said, as good, if not better, than most of those firearms, with the exception of the Combat Precision GT Dark Horse. It was also considerably more expensive. Sometimes, in some instances, like $2,500 more expensive than some of the guns that we were comparing it to, right? So the question there was not so much, is Fowler better? The question there was more value proposition. Does the additional $1,000 to $2,500 more that the Fowler costs, is it justified? I think the problem I have with that argument is that I think it's very much dependent upon where you stand, what your budget is, and all of that. But I did say that just from a shooting perspective, manufacturing perspective, fit and finish, that Fowler was the better gun with the exception of the Combat Precision GT Dark Horse, which happens to be more expensive than the Fowler, right? Where Fowler is going to, where Fowler's price was kind of a detriment to it when I was comparing it to the mid-tier, maybe it's an advantage when we compare it to the upper tier. So why don't we start off comparing what I feel like are very, very close firearms. The Atlas Apollo versus the Fowler Vanta 9, right? Both of these guns are ported in a V-port kind of setup, if you can see that. Both have really, really good grips. I've told you guys that the Fowler Valentine grip is like a warm hug. My favorite grip out there is the Atlas grip, primarily because of the modularity of it. Although I don't have any side panels on my Apollo, which makes it even more comparable in that perspective to the Fowler. Look, I think both of these guns are really, really well done. They both feel phenomenal. I would say the Fowler shoots a little smoother, a little less violent. Not that the Apollo is violent. I'm just saying comparatively speaking. The Fowler shoots a little bit smoother, a little bit softer. I feel like the Apollo, though, is probably a little faster. And so I just think it depends on what you like. Some people like a little bit more oomph, a little bit more kick, if you will. They want to feel the recoil, especially when it's easily managed with something like the Atlas porting system, right? Other people want a really smooth feeling gun. I would say that these guns are very, very comparable. I think if you ask 10 people, 5 people would say they like the Apollo better, and 5 people would say they like the Fowler better. I'm going to call it pretty much a draw, which, and when you look at the value proposition, makes sense. When I got my Apollo, it was $6,000. I think now they're running like 63 or 65, and that's very comparable to the Fowler. If I were looking to buy one or the other, I would say from a shooting perspective, I'm going to give them a draw. But in all likelihood, I would probably get the Fowler just because aesthetically, I feel like the Fowler is a better looking firearm. I think, I've said this before, I think Fowler knocked it out the park relative to aesthetics. The other thing I would tell you is that you do see a lot of Atlases out there. Maybe not a ton of Apollos, but you see a lot of Atlases out there. You don't see a lot of Fowlers. And they're hard to get your hands on. So like if I were walking into a store and both of these were in the display case and I didn't have either one, which obviously I do. If I didn't have either one, I'm probably getting the Fowler because of the rarity of it and because of the aesthetics of it. All right, let's talk about this matchup. Let's talk about the Fowler versus the Terran Tactical Sandviper. Now look, fam, what I told you I felt like the Fowler really had over the Apollo was aesthetics. Well, I don't know if the Fowler has better aesthetics than the Terran Tactical Sandviper. I feel like the Sandviper is one of the most aesthetically pleasing guns out there. And I feel like where Terran does set himself apart is he knows how to make a gun look good. And he's been doing it for a long time with a lot of different platforms and a lot of different firearms. Whether it was his Glocks, whether it was his Combat Master series, or whether it's the Viper series. I think aesthetically, the Sandviper is as nice, if not nicer, than the Fowler. Just aesthetically, right? Now, let's talk about shootability. I've said this many, many times. When it comes to the Sandviper, this sucker shoots, bro. It shoots. It's fast. It's flat. It's accurate. Look at the Honest Outlaw and PewView videos that they did on the Sandviper. Honest Outlaw said that from a trigger perspective and from a shootability perspective and how fast the gun shoots, that it's a good a shooter as his Atlas Erebus. Man, that is high praise. I don't know if I would put it there, but it shoots. It shoots. It'll shoot with this one 100%. So I think aesthetics wise, I think the Terran Tactical Sandviper is better. I think from a shootability perspective, I think they're comparable. I think that comp on the Sandviper does work. I think where Fowler has a distinct advantage though over the Sandviper is in the quality of the machining. I think the gun is just really, 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 really well made. Now, I would also say that from a price perspective, the Sandviper is like an $8,000 gun while the Fowler is like a $6,000 gun. So there's a $2,000 gap. And so, you know, it's hard for me to say that the Sandviper is better when I feel like the quality of this firearm, the quality of the Fowler is better. I think aesthetics, the Sandviper's a little better, and I think shootability, they're comparable. So the question is this gun, would you pay $2,000 more for this gun than this gun? Well, I would say generally speaking, if I'm buying just for the gun, I'm picking up a Fowler because of the price differential. But if I'm buying for an investment and I can get this gun for $8,000, I'm probably buying this gun because I know, especially here in California, I can sell this gun tomorrow for like $12,000, $13,000 because of how rare it is. And Fowlers are rare too, but not as rare as a Sandviper. And so, yeah, fam, look. I'm so happy to have both of these guns in my collection. I am tickled pink. Like I said, I think the Fowler is just a better, well-made gun at a cheaper price. but from a shootability perspective, I'd say the guns are probably even, and from an aesthetics perspective, I think the Sandviper is a little bit more attractive. All right, fam, let's get into the big boys here. We have the Fowler versus that Hayes Island tri-ported versus that V8. This is where the rubber meets the road. Now, when I bought this gun, it was $6,500. Very comparable to the Fowler. I'm just going to come out and let you know the Haze is better. I just think all around manufacturing, fit and finish, feel, shootability, you name it, it's better in every aspect. Fowler makes a phenomenal gun. Now, it's not miles apart. I don't want to make it seem like that. But I just think in pretty much every aspect, trigger, you name it, I just feel like the Haze is a better made gun. Yeah, and if I had to choose between the two, I would definitely get the Haze. Now, especially when the Haze was $6,500. But Haze has recently raised their prices. And so now for an island ported barrel, this gun is probably about $8 grand now versus when I bought it for $6,500. So then the question is the Haze $1,500, $1,500 better than the Fowler? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe, maybe not. Better gun, better value. All right, fam, last but not least, your boys Venom Custom Quadport all steel gun, tri-ported with like kind of the V ports on the side and then the top port on the top, fam. This gun's one of the best guns, shooting guns I've ever shot. I don't know what to tell you. Is it better than the Fowler? 100%. 100%. It's better than the Haze. If I think the Haze is better than the Fowler, you know I think the Venom is better than Fowler. I just think all around better. I should also say that, 100% of the guns at Venom and Haze are manufactured at Venom and Haze, although they use Atlas parts. Same can't be said for the Fowler. But again, I'm not holding that against Fowler. That's just a side note. I would just say that it's a better gun. Now, again, $8 grand-ish, $6 grand-ish. Is it $2 grand, $1,500, $2 grand better? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's better. Certainly shootability-wise, no, I don't think it's $2 grand better. But it's better. It's better. It's noticeably better, in my opinion. All right, fam, so when you look at the Fowler Vanta 9, just know you've got a really, really great firearm. A lot of this is subjective, fam. A lot of this is subjective. A lot of it is what you've grown accustomed to. But I would definitely say if I was talking about Fowler, I would say it's at the very, very high end of the mid tier or the low end of that GOAT tier. Either way, it says great, great, great gun. Kudos to Fowler for making a phenomenal firearm. To have a $6,000 gun that can run with Venom, that can run with Haze, that could run with Rafferty, that could run with Infinity, I think says a lot about the gun. And I think, like I said, aesthetically, Fowler's killing it. Shootability, they're killing it. It's just an awesome, awesome firearm. I'm so glad I had the opportunity to add it to my collection. All right, fam, that's it for this episode. Until next time, as always, take care of one another and peace.